Hello and welcome to Incisive's video webinar, the 5 new store formats reshaping retail, and what that means for your point of sale. A special thanks to our partners Toshiba and to our production partners RetailWire. I'm Giri Agarwal, your moderator for today. I'm a co-founder at Incisive, which is a digital transformation insights and benchmarking firm. And on today's webinar, we'll learn about 5 emerging brick and mortar store formats, including their key characteristics of the experience and illustrative examples. We'll talk about how a specialty retailer such as Dunn Edwards is redefining its store experience in that context, and what each format means in terms of impact on store teams, processes, and enabling technologies such as point of sale. But before we dive into the main dialogue with our panelists, I wanted to share 3 recent brick and mortar experiences that sort of stayed with me. So American Dream is one of the most exciting rebirths of the mall. You know, that mall's dead, but it's alive about 10 minutes away from me in Secaucus, New Jersey. It's a entertainment and retail hybrid. There is a NHL-size ice rink and Nickelodeon theme park that's already open. More entertainment and retail stores are coming in 2020. It's going to be 50% retail, 50% entertainment. Casa Mami is a livable, shoppable Airbnb in California. Now, this is a design house that uses Airbnb as its store. So digital upstarts are not only rethinking what a store should be, but what can be a store. And stores are no longer the domain of traditional retailers and brands alone. Stores are a form of media. I mean, this is what you're looking at here is one of many Line Friends stores around the world. Line is Japan's leading instant messaging app. So think of WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger having a store. They have a bunch of these around the world. There's one in New York as well. So what these examples really tell us is that we are clearly in a retail renaissance, where the role of the store is being reimagined. And the 3 key tenets of this reimagined brick and mortar store are experience, convenience, and service. And what we're beginning to see is that both incumbent and younger retailers and brands are experimenting with and scaling 5 unique store formats that deliver a combination of these 3 values of experience, convenience, and service. So to talk about these emerging new store formats and their impact on enabling capabilities such as point of sale, I'm pleased to welcome our panel for today, Rich Stefani and Robert Parsons. Rich, I'll come to you first. Well, welcome and happy Halloween. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and I'll also throw you a little curveball. Talk to us about your most recent favorite store experience that is not Dunn Edwards, and why.
Sure. So in the spirit of Halloween, about 30 years ago, I first started in retail as a cashier at a drugstore chain called Genevieve's. And one of the options I had to do in the first 6 months was dress up as a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle to literally bring in customers into the store. So since then, I've been in retail for at least over 25 years. I'm the CIO of Nippon Paint USA, and one of our subsidiaries is Dunn Edwards Paint, which is a large Southwest paint company here. I was just thinking of one of the best experiences that I had recently was going to a conference earlier in this year, and there was a pop-up food court. Now, the interesting thing about this was there were only 3 selections on these self-payout kiosks. You had a sandwich, a snack, and then a beverage. And I have to say the experience was delightful. All the customers, there were no lines. You're sitting there between seminars trying to move as quickly as you can. What a great concept, a great approach.
Awesome, appreciate that. We also have Robert. Robert, same question for you. Just a quick hello to the audience, a little about yourself and your favorite store experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy Halloween. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Robert Parsons. I have responsibility in Toshiba Global Commerce Solutions for the hardware solutions and the OS components that go along with our store infrastructure. Been with this business for about 6 years. Before that, I worked inside networking server type of hardware solutions before coming into retail. My best, most recent experience is I'm kind of in an interesting position. I have 3 teenage daughters and then a very surprise 5-year-old son. And our experiences now in shopping tend to revolve around how we deal with the overtime of parenting, as my wife and I call it. So our experience now is I've got a 5-year-old that we get into self-checkout and I can keep them really engaged and part of the experience, and I'm not having this 5-year-old wander away from me. It's a different type of experience for me, but still been something that has made it fun for us as a family.
Awesome. I'm sure if you look at sort of the 5 store formats when we delve into them, a few of these will relate very well with the favorite experiences that you spoke to. So we can always do a callback. I'm sure there's one that's coming forward. So let's go right ahead. Format number 1, we're seeing emergence of showrooms and service hubs. These are experiences that are really redesigned around the idea that shoppers don't just buy stuff. They use it. There is the stuff that you're selling has a place in the broader narrative of their lives. And retailers are really recognizing that and building experiences that offer shoppers richer experiences around how they use products. If you're thinking about what someone like an Indochino, which is a digitally native vertical brand that's disrupting the entire made-to-measure category for men's apparel, or the Nordstrom local stores that have been in the news recently, that even offer things like returns from competitive retailers. You could buy something from Macy's and return it at a Nordstrom local. Most of these stores have smaller store footprints, so they can fit more urban lifestyles. They carry little to no inventory, perhaps. They offer services around order fulfillment, a lot of buy online, pick up in store, using stores to fulfill online orders. They may offer adjacent experiences. Again, thinking about how you use or what your relationship with that store is or that retailer is. Tailoring services at Nordstrom Local, for example. And these really require highly trained store staff that then offer personalized fit or style advice. So again, fairly clear category of store formats. Rich, as you sort of think about Dunn Edwards, what sorts of value-added services are you thinking about or do you offer in your stores? And how are stores evolving as a destination for customers to learn more about your products?
Absolutely. And I would tell you that our stores likely fall into this particular category. So when you think of buying paint, what an exciting process. No, seriously, most of our stores are going to carry the default product's going to be white. And then the customer comes in and he or she might have a magazine, a competitor color, a piece of cloth from a blanket. And they're looking to be able to match the color to coordinate perhaps within their living rooms or et cetera. So the requirements of customizations are enormous in our particular business. We also have color specialists in the store. And the role of these associates is to really work with the customer, try and figure out, okay, what are you trying to do in your home? What's the look that you're trying to get to? And there's enormous palettes of different colors. And when you even have additional challenges, like folks like myself that are colorblind, well, that makes things kind of interesting. You really can rely on those specialists. So the entire experience is this amazing level of service that our associates provide for our customers. And I would tell you that interaction is the key. I mean, that's really, when you think of retail, when you think of stores, the more interaction that we can have, whether or not that's with technology or with people, to help provide that great experience for the customers, that's the most important element.
Awesome. I think some really cool points there. What I'd also love to do is make this, well, as interactive as possible with the audience. For the audience, just a quick note, as we're going through this chat, use the raise hand button to express agreement, or if you identify with anything that the panelists are talking about that resonates with you, certainly feel free to do that. You also have the chat button through which you can submit questions, which we will address towards the end of the programming here. So Robert, I'll come to you. I think, and Rich was beginning to get there, and all of what he described sort of has the underpinning of the role of the store associate. So, in such store formats, we find that the role of the store manager becomes multifunctional. In fact, you may have a shrinking sort of labor footprint in a certain sense, where one person's doing a lot. They're engaging shoppers, they're being frontline brand ambassadors, they're helping place orders, answering service-related questions. As you think about that, what are the top 2 or 3 key enablers that you would advise retailers to prioritize as they think about their point of sale?
Yeah, I think those are great examples. Rich gave a good example of how interactive the shopping experience is becoming, and we're seeing that same thing where technology is moving from its traditional position in the front end of the store into more interactive spaces, deeper into the overall shopping experience, and those associates are having to engage more in the point of the purchase decision, not at the point of sale. Certainly from our perspective, we've really focused on flexibility. Technology needs to be placed in new locations. It needs to fit inside the store so that it's really supporting that brand aesthetic. And the second thing that we focus on quite a bit is we have really, really busy store associates, as you said, store managers changing their roles, and you need to continue to emphasize reliability and availability of that hardware. You can't have your associates thinking about making sure the equipment's working. They have to know it's dependable and available. So those two things really, I think, represents what we're focused on is how do you support a new retail experience, being flexible and where you put the technology, how it represents the store, and then also how you make sure it's always there and available so that you can focus on selling.
Great. So that covers showrooms and service hubs. Let's move on to format number 2 that we're seeing emerge, which is this idea of self-driven experiences. One of the core values, we conducted a ton of consumer research and we juxtaposed that with what high-performing retailers and brands are doing in their store strategies. This is the output of that sort of an exercise, right? So this observation on store formats emerging is in a certain sense addressing the key values that shoppers desire. And one of the key values that shoppers desire is this idea of empowerment, right? Let me be in charge, put me in charge of my experience. And they learn that from their digital experiences, but are increasingly wanting to see that in-store experiences. Don't interrupt me for menial tasks. I may have a playlist going on, I may be plugged in, and I want to complete my entire journey from digital into the store and back. So these are store experiences that offer shoppers that frictionless, self-assisted experience. H&M's has been in the news. H&M's been in the news for a lot of digital front-ending of their stores that people can consume information from. There's also Nike, and what we're seeing with the integration of the app into the store to being able to reserve a cubby and having just a self-driven experience. In the big box space, we're also seeing what Walmart's doing with their pickup towers and being able to sort of go to a store, complete a online order, pick up the item, and walk back, never having interacted with another human being. I know that works for a lot of folks. The challenge, Rich, seems to be that customers want different things at different times for different scenarios. So I may be the same customer that's sort of walking in and wants that self-assistance, and I may want empathetic assistance another time from a store associate. So, they may want self-driven checkout for a simple task, associate experience assistance for a complex task. How are you balancing, those competing forces at Dunn Edwards?
That's a great question, especially when you think about customers. So the business that we're in, our contractors, which represent the largest percentage of our customers, they're time-starved. And nothing could be more painful than walk into one of our stores and you see a long line. Now, let's say you've placed your order in advance. Wouldn't it be great, and you walk inside and you see that long line, and there's a will call kiosk, allows you to just walk right up, enter in your customer ID, take care of the transaction, walk to the back of the room, pick up your pay and go. So this is one particular area that we're exploring right now. We'll tell you another area that we've actually been, I would say Dunn Edwards has been a pioneer. Back in 2012, we started looking into mobile payment and line buster type technology. And years ago, we deployed mobile payment devices for exactly that reason. There's a long line at the register. Because you think about it, it's not just buying white paint. You've got to tint it. You've got to track all this additional information. So each customer interaction at the register could be 3 to 5 minutes at a time. So the ability to go ahead and then have a way of taking care of additional customers just by bringing on additional associates, even if you don't have enough physical registers, through a mobile payment checkout, really a great way to, again, provide great customer service to your customers.
No, agreed 100%. And, when Robert was talking about, his favorite store experience and relating back to this idea of, lack of interruption or the ability to sort of speed through checkout with things like self-checkout. But that's a little bit of a challenge, at least as we see it, where I think there's a lot of romance, and rightly so, for experiences such as Amazon Go. So this gravitation towards talking about self-driven experiences predominantly through the lens of payment and checkout exists today in our world. However, empowering shoppers to be in charge of their experience can be done in many different ways. So that I just want to sort of have you talk a little bit about beyond the checkout. What do you see as simple ways in which technology, specifically point of sale, can enable self-driven experiences in the store today?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, obviously, we also see this fantastic growth around self-service and this idea of making this seamless for customers. And there's a lot of significant investments that we can be making, both as retail and as technology providers, to enable that. But there's also a lot of really simple things that we can do that really enable a very savvy set of customers to do more, because really they're coming in far more aware than they have been in the past, both of basic background on products and the ability to execute on what they want to do at the pace they want to be at. One of the fastest areas for us of that interaction point really tends to be around having a secondary screen that's really an interactive touch point for customers throughout the store. It used to be, we sold a lot of displays in the business that were really about looking at the price, verifying what you purchased, but now we're seeing these customers wanting to interact in that time frame that they have available. So they can be interactive through touch, entering information, being able to sign up for additional purchase options, loyalty options. They can interact around with cameras, with their own mobile device. Just a lot of simple areas for a customer to interact with a lot more information than they had in the past, and being able to provide those different journeys as well. Second thing we think about is just how can you distribute sort of a technology around so that you're not always thinking about a transaction happening at this exit point. You're actually looking for places where if I come in with more information, Rich gave a great example of the will call. Can I use that technology and avoid a traditional queue because I've come in with a lot more information than I'm ready to operate on than maybe a customer that's really going through a detailed purchase decision. I'm more informed. I want to control my time, and being able to use technology to enable that is important for us.
Great. And the only thing I'd add just to what both of you said is this idea of digitizing the processes. I think that's critically important, really thinking about the experience in a digital first environment and using the store as a part of a journey versus the destination. And we're seeing a lot of retailers do that. Number 3 is shared experiences. So, this is the one that, quite honestly, when, the team's putting together, looking at the data and the research, this invokes the biggest eye rolls, because this is the furthest away from the definition of decades and decades of what a retail store was intended to be. But in a certain sense, this is actually back to what stores or market squares or zocolos were back in the day. In the earliest forms of civilization, the development of retail as a trade form, it was a gathering place. And shared experiences, as we're seeing, are these experiences that really offer shopper opportunities to participate in the community. And a large part and a large reason for that is, again, based on the consumer research that we've conducted, we're seeing shoppers want brands to be their friends. They want brands to act more like personalities. Brands and retailers can have a cult-like following, and they're using their stores to make them an opportunity for those communities to gather and share. I mean, famously, Apple calls has rechristened its stores maybe a year and a half ago into town squares, and look at what their sort of retail strategy is. But beyond that, Hub 17 is a great example. This is the lower level of Lululemon's New York Flatiron store. So if you're ever in the area, go check this out. It's large prime real estate in the heart of Manhattan that really sells nothing. It's a community space. They hold events there. They call it a gift to the city. Or you look at someone like a Todd Schneider store, again, about a few blocks from the Hub 17 Lululemon experience, and you walk into an apparel store that has multiple experiences that create opportunity for community. There's a bar, there's a barber shop. So we're really looking at stores that are becoming more of a rallying point for people that center around a brand or a retailer store. Rich, really, how are you thinking about using stores to express the Dunn Edwards brand?
Yeah, so it's a great, so this question is one where when you think about a paint store, it's not one where you think of, hey, the community's moving inside the store and hanging out. But reality is, think of all the contractors that are coming in that might be waiting for their products to be ready. here's an opportunity where we can provide some additional services. Maybe it's through providing internet access or providing information, providing coffee, simple things like that. I'm reminded of when I was at one of my previous clients years ago. I was in the clothing area, and we came up with a concept where, as we were looking at the different types of shopping experiences, one particular focus was on what we call the emerging selves customer. And this customer was the type of person that's coming into the store, and he or she's not sure of what to do, what to buy, and they're looking for help. So they might bring their friends with them. They might interact more with management or associates to help provide guidance. And nowadays, if you think about it, how much do we see with social media, where I post the color that I'm thinking within my living room, and I'm hoping that my friends in social media will provide feedback. So that sense of community, even in the paint industry, is absolutely critical. So this is a very important area.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, I think if you think about, again, that journey in the community, a lot of communities are being built around things like house.com or these sort of places that are digital that create that inspiration, and stores are still ultimately more the consummation of the purchase versus really places where we can inspire and gather. So it's really interesting where I think beginning to think about who you compete with, changes. It's not the paint store down the road, but really where are these points of inspiration happening? Robert, so this is an interesting one because here we're talking about a experience where potentially commerce may be incidental, but it's certainly beyond that in the store. So what do you sort of think of the role of the point of sale, or how does the point of sale drive the experience when it's not designed necessarily for commerce?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And historically, you think about how point of sale was designed. It was really an entire design point around speed, ergonomics, and space, right? We're thinking about what was the purpose of point of sale. And as we think about what we're designing products to today, it's really thinking a lot more about how does it fit into the store? How does it match the store aesthetic? How can it be integrated better in different places in the store? How does the flow work when we have multiple people, both the consumer and the associate using the technology? How do we think about this piece of technology either being part of the store and matching the brand image that they're trying to convey, or disappearing, in fact, into the store, making it disappear so you're not actually seeing that technology at all. It's just hidden behind where the store wants to promote their own brand or their own view. So we do a lot in our business now, a lot more about customization of colors and design points, and a lot around integration as well. How do we keep thinking about the store brand as being a key component of that experience, and not necessarily the whole focus being how fast can we check someone out? That isn't necessarily what the store is trying to promote anymore.
So, and we'll move on to number 4, which is the idea of immersive storytellers. Now these are experiences, again, that are so brand centric that they involve a recreation of the entire store. This has a lot to do with how you're designing your store, how you're creating an emotional bond with your shopper by using stores as a form of media, using stores as your livable 3-dimensional billboard. And we're seeing a lot of marketing investments, a lot of marketing teams and digital teams rethinking, stores are probably one of the best forms of supporting their brand. So these are experiences, again, that help really convert the traditional definition of what a relationship between a shopper and a brand should be from loyalty, which is designed around the idea of repeat purchase and frequency, to love, which is a more emotional construct and says between this relationship will perhaps allow for some irrational behavior, because that's the highest form of loyalty. And some of these experiences are really designed to create that sense of emotion and create that connection with shoppers. Rich, I sort of already asked you a little bit about how are you expressing the brand, but I think, talk to us a little bit about that sort of, you were telling us a story when we were talking about prepping for this webinar about the store with the mural. I'd love for the audience to hear that story and more, right? And how do you really think about stores as being a brand experience?
Absolutely, yeah. What a great thing that we did. So our Hermosa Beach store, it's a beautiful store, and it's got the left side of the wall as you're driving along PCH. There's this enormous wall. It might be 80, 90 feet across, 40 or 50 feet high. And of course, we used Dunn Edwards exterior paint to cover it, but it looked boring. And just a brilliant decision from the leadership team was to hire an artist and have him capture the soul of Hermosa Beach and the beach type community and build this beautiful artistic work of the ocean, surfers, you name it, all of that, and at massive scale. And it's just, if you ever get a chance to come in that area, it's such a beautiful thing to see. And yet we also used, of course, Dunn Edwards paints to actually make that happen. So what a great way to show that we're part of the community and how you can actually think about paint in a different way. It's not just painting walls, but you can actually get artistic with it. And so that was something really exciting. The other thing I would tell you about the storytelling in terms of capturing the brand would be as I think about ways to share information with customers and marketing communications within the store. One of the things that we've certainly been happy with by leveraging Toshiba hardware was the ability to be able to project videos and images and information across all the different point of sale channels and terminals, will calls, et cetera, across our stores.
That's it. Yeah, I'd love to someday visit that store. I get the opportunity to go around and visit a lot of great experiences, and I'll put that on the list for sure. Robert, so what do you really see as you've sort of gone back and looked at all these store formats experiences? I think this immersive storyteller piece is key, because a lot of sort of point of sale in brick and mortar experiences just sort of jumps out at you as one that sometimes these new refreshed experiences, and then you look at this, fixed terminal that looks ugly and wasn't designed really to fit into this sort of an experience. As you've thought about product development, developed new hardware, how have you sort of incorporated for this need for more branded store experiences? Think about that mural, and how would a point of sale sort of fit into that to augment the experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great example and a great opportunity for us to better integrate. I think about Rich's story here of having that mural really advertising, not just something, a work of art, but really advertising the product itself, and how we would be able to take some piece of technology or TCX 800 or another product and be able to integrate with that and allow that experience to go to another level. We're able to look at the colors, look at how it participates and it's involved there in the technology, and be able to maybe explore how I could use that in my home, how I can take those colors and apply them to the new design that I'm trying to implement. We've seen some interesting examples of folks taking the technology and integrating it. You have an example of toy stores down below where I'm going to actually try to customize a toy and have an exhibit where I'm in that process of looking at a basic toy and then being able to select how that was designed, how it might be put together, how it could be customized for a specific kid or even for an adult that has a particular interest. We also have done some of this for our products as well. It's interesting, as technology has progressed, it's allowed us to do some different things that we didn't think about before. In a lot of ways, like even something as simple as a receipt printer, we think about that as being fairly boring, but the ability to move a lot faster and be able to integrate graphics and grayscale has allowed us to be able to show much more rich pictures and really show a brand image on something as mundane as a receipt and leave something tangible with a customer that's not typically thought of. You're leaving a receipt behind. It's a proof of purchase, but it can also be a concept of a brand that they leave with in the store. That's a reminder of that experience, and more than just a transaction. When we think about our system units, there's certainly a lot of things that we're doing around making it flexible and integrated in these different experiences. Think about the wall from a wall mount perspective. Think about a toy stand, being able to make it disappear into the toy and be just a a point of interaction. This is really how retail is transitioning in a way away from that ugly tower that I know and love, but that has been in this point of sale checkout for a long time, and turns into something that really is about the product you're selling and why it is important, and being in the store is such a differentiated experience.
Gary, if I could add into Robert's point, one other idea that I was thinking about, we've seen a lot of virtual reality and augmented reality, and you think about that in the paint industry. Wouldn't it be great if I could take a video of my living room and come into a Dunn Edwards store and be able to load that in, and then work with a color specialist to determine different types of paint choices, reflecting things like time of the day, shading, sunlight, and then be able to show and represent that video now with the changed colors. And that's where the technology is heading. That's that storytelling, immersive experience where things are moving with technology. It's pretty exciting, even in paint.
Yeah, we may have to rework that old saying of watching paint dry. It may actually, and taking on from the augmented reality example, I think that's another sort of call for point of sale or other devices in the store. Your store systems need to be able to accommodate that extension, that extensibility, right? So maybe a HoloLens-like experience within the store that's connected to a central area. But Robert, I'm not sure if you have a point. I think, again, from a product design perspective, how you guys thought about something like augmented reality or virtual reality, or have you?
It's still in its early phases, but certainly something that's exciting for us and an opportunity for us to take, just as we talked about earlier, a much more informed and technology savvy customer who's got a mobile device, and be able to say, how can I enrich this experience where I'm using my mobile device and using some piece of technology to be able to add richer information. As I joked in earlier about my son, add a little bit of a game to the experience, whether you're having kids or as part of the overall store experience. Augmented reality in particular it lends itself very well to that combination of a fixed piece of information that can be a reference point, either through beacons or others, back to consumer technology that really can basically together make a much more interesting experience for the customer. So definitely an area that we continue to explore, and I think is exciting for us with these new blended store types.
Perfect. All right, and that sort of will bring us to format number 5. Very interesting. This is an area of high innovation, marketplaces and platforms, and an opportunity to create sort of a similar brick and mortar business model that we've all come to know and adopt and love. The Amazons and the eBays and now the Walmarts of the world have perfected on sort of the digital marketplaces. And these are experiences that connect shoppers with brands in new and interesting ways. It's really completely gut rehabbing the retail business model, using stores as the central thrust. And you're looking at someone like Beta. If you're not familiar, those in the audience with Beta, again, highly recommend researching them. They've built this sort of a store-in-a-store model where they use a content management system tightly integrated with the point of sale. A same device becomes product information display. You can purchase the device, but the content is being driven by brand partners, not by the retailer. And they've partnered with folks like Macy's and Lowe's, and they run over 100 stores. So this is happening at scale. They've also recently launched into fashion and into toys or specialty. So it is also cross-format and applicable. In fact, Toys R Us' second coming is in the form of a curated retail experience that's more about the brand and about content than it is about the commerce, and that's Beta driving that. Another one is The Real Real, and this is a consignment retailer in the luxury segment. And you can go into the store, you can go in as a consignee, someone that's sort of offering up your used luxury goods, as well as a shopper that's looking for that unique item. And think about in a store environment where every SKU in a consignment business is a unique item, or every item is a SKU. as I guess the right way to say that. So marketplaces and platforms ripe for innovation, ripe with sort of really exciting experiences. Neighborhood goods is another one that comes to mind. So Rich, I'll sort of come to you. I think this is the one where, we can sort of do some blue sky and talk about, hey, are you sort of participating in any store-in-store sort of relationships with, other retailers or platforms? Could you think of a marketplace model in the Dunn Edwards store? As you think about marketplaces and platforms, just love to get your view on how you see this relating to Dunn Edwards.
Absolutely. And I was thinking about an experience I had when I was still in consulting years ago. And we were working with a retailer, and they had two stores co-located in the same shopping center. One was for music and the other one was for books. And there was a massive wall between those two stores because the point of sale systems weren't integrated and the inventory management system wasn't integrated. So imagine the experience for those customers having to go through two separate processes, two separate entry doors to actually be able to make their purchases. The world has changed since then. When you think of our industry, our primary customer are contractors, right? And then we also have household customers. And so there's a relationship there between our contractors and Dunn Edwards. And while at the same time we want to promote the success of our contractors and certainly our brand, there's also a risk if we think about it, because let's say a household customer comes in and selects a particular contractor that we make a recommendation through our virtual or online marketplace, making suggestions. What if they have a bad experience? Whose fault is it? Is it the contractor? Is it Dunn Edwards that went and provided that recommendation? Who owns that? And you think about it also from a consumer products capability. So when you think back years ago, and there was that Tylenol incident where P&G pulled all the Tylenol medicine off of the shelves everywhere. In that particular case, what you remembered is you remembered Tylenol. You didn't remember the retailer that was carrying it. So I guess the thing that we need to focus on is, as you build those relationships, you've got to choose wisely. And it really does need to be something that is an extension and complementary to your brand. So it's something that it's possible. I would tell you for our business, the area that would make most sense to me would be in design stores. So as you have, let's say a new family or a new individual that wants to make their first home purchase, what are the kinds of things he or she needs to worry about? Wouldn't it be great if there was a design area, a building where you could see all different things? Okay, here's how you want to have, here's the type of furniture that you might consider based on the location. Here's the type of paint choices. What other kinds of things? Oh, here's the type of technology. Something that, again, that marketplace concept. Really a great idea and thought of where things are headed to. And I'm sure we'll see it.
I think some really great points, especially around the potential sort of messiness that can ensue, but therefore this is not something that brands and retailers are sort of getting into in a cavalier attitude. None of these are, and it needs a thoughtful approach. And I think you've pointed out a few key areas of pitfalls that people need to consider. Robert, I mean, in terms of thinking about a pop-up experience or a store-in-store or a marketplace, what would you see as sort of the key building blocks from a point of sale perspective?
Yeah, I think that you got to start with something that's very, very flexible from a platform perspective. It's really where we focused overall. These different pop-up experiences, or even store in a store where you have different brands with different approaches and really different sales cycles. You have to think about the way the associate and the consumer are interacting in different ways. And yet you want to be able to get those same value propositions of, commonality, easy to service. I mean, you want to take advantage of the fact that you're in a one location and sharing some technology across that location, even if those experiences and way that technology is being used is very, very different. So really focusing on flexibility as a building block and selecting flexibility that can be as expansive as you need it to be, or as minimalistic as the experience requires. And thinking about the second building block is, we know that the consumer, as we've talked about before, is getting to be much more savvy, much more technically enabled. And so how do you think about whatever you're using is going to engage with that consumer's technology throughout the store, and that's not going to slow down. We expect, I think all of us should expect that we're going to see customers coming in with a lot more on-hand technology. You know, we joked about people think like Apple Watches and now today and Fitbits and the like. We're all becoming much more wired up, and we're going to expect those things that we use in our day-to-day lives to interact in our shopping experiences as well.
Fantastic. So, we'll sort of wrap this up with a few sort of parting notes, and we'll address a couple of questions. There's been great engagement. I see a couple of questions trickling in. Some are really interesting, so I'm going to prioritize those here. One is more a housekeeping issue. So there's actually a couple of folks asking if this information will be available as a follow-up. Absolutely. We will have not only a recording of this webinar available for you to share with your teams, there's also a companion sort of ebook which expands on some of the information that was shared on this webinar. So that will also be available to you as part of a follow-up email that you'll receive for attending this webinar. Feel free to share that. Now, one very interesting question here really around, because we focus this webinar and the examples here on apparel specialty. But the question is, hey, would you have similar examples applying to grocery stores? And that's a fantastic question for me, because when we looked at sort of retailers and brands that are addressing this as an opportunity, that's an area that we're seeing ripe for sort of tremendous disruption. So I'll take a quick shot. I'll go around with Rich, specifically to you because of your Winn-Dixie experience prior, or the grocery experience prior, and see if you have anything to reflect on that. May get the grocer wrong, but we're seeing in grocery, for example, what Hema is doing in China, which is Alibaba's sort of self-driven experience around going into a grocery store, shopping, buying your produce, and not only completing the self-checkout, but going up to a live counter, sharing with them what you've bought, and having a chef prepare a live fresh meal. And that's a phenomenal sort of combination of a self-driven experience as well as something that's becoming a shared experience. Not only you're buying your groceries, but converting the act of eating back to the point of you don't only buy stuff, you use it, and you're now converting that into a communal setting where people can share, as they do in a restaurant, the experience of eating together. So that's just one that comes to mind. But Rich, any thoughts? I know you have some grocery experience that you could reflect back on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's interesting when you think about it. Years ago, that concept of big box and the simplicity and elegance of having the Costco store that is exactly the same size everywhere, the Walmart store, the Sam's Club or whatever. And grocery really has been in that same space. When I think about some of the companies that I've worked with, and then also in the consulting space, you try to make things as easy as you can and follow what you believe to be a winning format. But the interesting thing, and I think one of the takeaways as I've kind of just gotten to know you, Gary, is that really, even in grocery, you need to be flexible and you need to be able to try out different formats. And those formats could be different based on location. And that was one of the most interesting things that I found at my last place. As you would expect, the demographics within each of the different communities throughout the country and throughout the world can be so different. And you want to be able to tailor that experience to really focus on the customers who are shopping your stores. And so how does that look? Do you blend in several of these types of formats? Do you try this particular format because you're in a very expensive area, like let's say San Francisco, San Jose, or you're in the middle of Lubbock, Texas, where you have as much real estate as you want? You really do need to have different ways of approaching each of these. And it is a challenge if you think about it for businesses, because there's risk there. There's risk of failure. And really, many of us know that you learn the most when you fail or when others fail and you watch them. So there really is an opportunity here. Grocery space is definitely one that's changing a lot. And, it'll be interesting to see how things shake out over the years, especially with new concepts like from Amazon.
Interesting. Actually, you answered another question that I saw a few people ask. So we'll just address it very quickly, which is this idea of you were beginning to go there, hey, in experimenting, fusing the formats and trying different things out. So the question was, are these formats mutually exclusive? Can one store effectively combine multiple formats. I think you already addressed that. We would all agree that, hey, these are not sacrosanct, do this or that. Obviously, there is a true north, and the more clarity you can have with what you're trying to achieve, the more successful you're likely to be. If you try and do too many things, it may sort of reek of not having that clarity. So anything you'd add to that, Rich? Any other sort of final thoughts on that?
No, I think you got it.
Okay, cool. Well, I think what I'd love to do is sort of wrap up, this really interactive conversation with some key takeaways. So we've seen sort of stores are evolving, into this multi-dimensional experience across three values, which is a better experience, convenience, and service. And 5 new store formats are emerging that, through a combination of these few things, create an opportunity for you to address them. We've walked through those 5 store experiences today. What that means is that store teams will need to be more versatile. They will need to become experts at specific things. There'll be brand ambassadors, there'll be efficient pickers, there'll be service managers. And what your point of sale needs to evolve to is to support this versatility and this multidimensionality. And a few examples that we didn't necessarily sort of, throw out there as key hooks, but I'd love to mention are, to be used as sometimes as a side-by-side clienteling device or as a, self-service kiosk, and offer that flexibility. To be easier to weave into the fabric of the store design, to be used as a showcase for interactive product content or other forms of media, to deliver important operational tasks and information to store associates. All of this while being easy to service and maintain at scale. So that's sort of what we all spoke of. I really want to take a minute to thank Rich. Thank you so much for being here with us and sharing the Dunn Edwards story. And I want to thank Robert Parsons from Toshiba for supporting the webinar and for guiding us through the impact of all these strategies into the point of sale. Thanks also to everybody that joined. And the final word of thanks for Retail Wire for being our production partner. This is Giri signing off. Have a great day.